I've been given the privilege of discussing this selecting of switches. I didn't sit on the working group. Gerard Phillips from Arist did. Unfortunately, he's in London, and coming this far was not his thing. So I've been voluntold for this. Working with Jack on this, so any questions or controversy, Jack, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so there are two reports. The group has been working diligently at this, and there was a first report. One was created, and we'll talk about the results of that. And then there was a second report of 1.2. So this is what we're discussing as content of this. So again, yeah, the assumption of IPMX is, hey, it's low bandwidth, no PTP, I can use any switch I can find. Yes. Yeah, but remember, IPMX does cover everything from asynchronous low bandwidth to, uncompressed 2110, and but the biggest thing is IPMX doesn't remove the need to understand your requirements. So I'm sorry some of this, coming in may seem really obvious, and I apologize for that, but, that was part of the thing coming into this. You have to understand your workflow. There's no difference. You have to understand things like how much bandwidth am I going to do? How much jitter and latency? Is there any sort of timing needed in my network? And the workload, is this thing a 1-hour thing a week, or is it a 24/7? All those kind of things hit you. Do I need telemetry? It may be a small thing sitting in a pub somewhere, but I've got now 50 pubs, and they expect some sort of, support on that. Is any telemetry coming out? Any kind of logging coming? You got to understand those requirements before you pick a switch. And so those scenarios, the initial part was, well, wait a minute, we got small, medium, and large. Let's classify them all that way. But you can have, I've been involved in broadcasting for a long time. You can have a single person studio that is more important than, the 14 monitors running in the cafeteria. So size, it's the importance, how important is that video or that production that I'm doing. So it was hard to classify that way, but that was one of the first attempts, is this small, medium, and large. As always, the biggest thing is the value. You probably put a business plan together for this, so you're not going to spend $50,000 on a camera and $100 on the network connecting it. You look at your value, look at how important it is, what kind of production you're doing, and the line that I was given very long time ago when it was one of the most important hockey games in Canada was, no one was going to thank me for saving money if we went off air. And so that's the thing is look, make sure what it is. And one of the rules of thumbs we're using, if you've got an infrastructure, if you're like 2% of the cost is your network, that might not be the right number you're looking at. 10 to 15 might be that number you're looking at compared to your audio and video equipment kind of thing. But again, that's not hard and fast either. So the first attempt to qualify the switches was looking at, this small, medium, and large kind of environment. Looking at it, what kind of requirements, single switch unmanaged, single switch managed, what kind of protocols, do we need QoS, that kind of thing. Putting this, grid together, as it always with these working groups, was, very friendly discussion. I was on some of the first ones. And then it was like, okay, now let's take switches and the value and the bandwidth and putting all the different specifications that come to do. Needless to say, when you're on the web looking at a switch trying to find the specifications, they don't all say them the same way. Sometimes as you even get into them, they don't say anything. So trying the effort that we were going through, trying to find the specifications on some of these switches became problematic. Like, how can you recommend a switch if you can't even find out what its multicast capabilities are? And so when this process was concluded, it was like, okay, we're going to need a second effort. This first effort, this path, was an interesting exercise, but it isn't going to work, because you have to understand, how this is going to work. How can we give something to people saying with confidence, if this is the requirements of your thing, you could use this switch? And how is this going to be tested? Who's going to verify it? This kind of thing. So these approaches, were discussed before the second effort came into play. So this, this has been published, right?
No,
No, they're out for draft. Yeah, so this is the conclusion of...
They are public, right? They're not public. They're not public.
Okay, so I'm not allowed talking about them. Yeah. No. So this time really looked at it, okay, how do we use a common measuring stick? And so RFC 2544, 1999 as far as I'm aware, we worked on that one. But it's basically defining the bandwidth, how you measure bandwidth packets moving through a network. So by using that as the standard to do, we can talk about capacity, we can talk about, and define these things like, max host port rate, so that we can create a common language, the rate, the flows, uplink rates, max flow, multicast support, what type of things, so you can go through all these kind of classifications and say, it will do this. It's tested, if you need this, it will happen. QoS, true or false, these kind of things. And while this, there's a lot of information here, it's how do you distill this into something that gives a clear picture of, look, I need 800 megabits of bandwidth to do my thing here. How can I define that and do that? And so what was suggested was, which is, I think is a great one, is give a really quick picture, It looks very much like when you're looking at a Coke can, you can find out, oh, that's bad for me. This one, you can tell what's good for you. So yeah, this, the first example plaque card there, it only does unicast, but it has QoS. And it's got, the information laid out, these ports, this port group has this bandwidth, this kind of thing to it. Or the next switch that, hey, I need to do multicast with PTP on it. That switch will do it. So this plaque card example has been suggested as a way to move forward, that you could then put these on switches, how they're tested, who tests them, all that is the process that really has to be figured out going forward. But this gives at least a common way to recognize the features and throughput of a switch. And that's where it ended up. So the plaque card will give this performance, enable the system designers to work out, because either you're figuring this out yourself or you're using a consultant to figure it out for you, or a system integrator. And so this gives everyone that metric. And those metrics, are standard. Everyone can't interpret them differently. That's a stupid statement. But the RFC for bandwidth provisioning is pretty well understood moving forward. And so this document does not define who's doing the testing or how it will take place or who's responsible, but if really looking for some feedback on this. If this makes sense, if this is a way to move forward, then we can go, okay, how do we find someone that can do it? How do we cost this? Who's going to be responsible? That kind of thing. But you don't want to jump off the bridge until there's at least some industry recognition of where this can be. And so we're hoping that people can come around this standardized process. But like every other piece of equipment, that does not remove the responsibility to know what your workflow is. I was talking to someone recently on a Pro AV thing that they bought an inexpensive switch because it was low bandwidth audio, and it started out as that, but then someone decided, well, wait a minute, we're a theater, we want video shown in the lobby. When people are out there, we want to have this, so we'll throw some video on. And then, we wanted to do Wi-Fi, and we wanted, suddenly everything was running on this switch, and lo and behold, they hadn't secured it even. And so there was a big security problem that took out this whole thing that originally was just audio. So you still have to understand your network. What are the applications running on there, the pieces that are needed to do it? And if you are going to connect it to the internet, please secure the thing. But as always with everything in this network world is trust. Ask someone. Hey, have you done this? What have you used? What have been your experience? We're still going to rely a lot on that. But we hope this label will at least give a really good starting and talking point for it. John, any questions?